Hey, Redeemer, this is Matt. I just wanted to try a different format than just purely emails. I sent a video out to you on how to download the Bible on your phone to be able to follow the Bible project, and just wanted to share with you and try to do something a little different by doing a video. And so I'm here. I'm here in my office, and something I alluded to yesterday in my sermon that I didn't get into. I was struggling with whether to make it 4 points or 3 points, because that the last two verses, it's believed, are an appendage, as it were, to the psalm, to Psalm 51, during the time of exile. And so that really informs. So it makes a lot of sense. So if you look here at Psalm 51, and you look at the end in 18 and 19, where it says, "Do good to Zion in your good pleasure, build up the walls of Jerusalem, then will you delight in right sacrifices." You got to remember that during the Babylonian exile, there was no temple. There were no sacrifices that were being offered. And so that's why this build up, and you can see that right here, in the Hebrew, but you got build up the walls of Jerusalem, because the walls are destroyed. And so I thought that I just would share that with you, that what is happening in Israel at this time, and I believe that probably was added during the Babylonian exile through some of the study that I had done, rather than David himself. But David himself, as he's ending it, he would end here in verse 17, "The sacrifices of God are a broken spirit, a broken and contrite heart, O God, you will not despise." That's a great way to end it. It does seem a little strange. "Do good to Zion in your good pleasure." Well, why would they put it here? Why would those in the exile put "do good to Zion in your good pleasure"? Because they knew that they were in exile because of their sin. They knew that they were in exile because of their adultery. Because of their adultery and idolatry. That's how their adultery against their husband Yahweh was exhibited, was through this Babylonian exile, was God's punishment to them. And so it makes perfect sense that in Psalm 51, the preeminent confession of David, that you would see that Israel itself is saying, "We've committed adultery as well. Lord, do good to Zion, repair the broken walls that are resulting, so that there might be right sacrifices made to you, burnt offerings, whole burnt offerings." Because even so, God, you have given us a broken spirit. You've given us a contrite heart. Now we are ready to offer sacrifices to you because of what you've done on the inside. So that's one thing. Second thing I didn't get into, and I wanted to. It's so cool. When I was doing my studies, I mentioned this. At the end of 2 Samuel 11, you got this phrase, "But the thing that David had done displeased the Lord." And I said that quite literally, you see here in the Hebrew this word "ayin," right? And the English Standard Version has to translate it "displease the Lord," because instead of giving it a rigid explanation, but you see here the words, or the things, the debar, which he had done, David, that is David, had done, in the eyes of the Lord, they were evil. Okay? So that's one thing, but then you see in the translation in the Greek what's called the Septuagint, and the evil was shining. I mentioned this, was shining. The evil, the rhema, the words, to translate debar, the evil word shined. Right? That is the things which David had done, had done. You got there, and you can see that at the bottom. It's an aorist active indicative, that David had done in the eyes of the Lord. So we see here that these things shined in the Lord's eyes, like he saw them as plain as day, even though David spent days, weeks, and months trying to hide this from Nathan, from everyone. But the Lord saw. The Lord saw. So have that in your mind's eye. pun intended. But have that in your mind's eye, that this was in the eyes of the Lord, the ayin of Yahweh, the eyes of the Lord. Because then you go down here where, let's see, here it is right here. In verse 12, for you did it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun, in the light of the sun, right? I will do this before everyone. And what is he going to do? Behold, I will raise up evil. Remember that same word that was up in verse chapter 11 at the end, the evil thing that he had done. I will raise up evil against you out of your own house, and I will take your wives before your eyes and give them to your neighbor. And he shall lie with your wives in the sight of the sun. So what you have done in the dark, I'm going to bring judgment upon you and do it in daylight. And you're like, well, that's really strange. Well, it is. But it's judgment that God's bringing on David. And so then you go to chapter 16, verse 22, his son Absalom, who we read was a very handsome young man, and he gathered around himself 50 folks that we read in chapter 14. He gathered all these different people around him and was a rebel against David. You start to see some of the parallels between David and God, and Absalom and David. He says, So Absalom went to Ahithophel. Give your counsel. What shall we do? What are we going to do? And Ahithophel said to Absalom, go in to your father's concubines, whom he has left to keep the house, because David was out of the palace. And all Israel will hear that you have made yourself a stench to your father. So basically, he's going into David's harem to be with his concubines and to say, I am the king. And that's why it's going to be a stench to your father. And the hands of all who are with you will be strengthened. So they pitched a tent for Absalom on the roof. And Absalom went into his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. Now the Lord brought judgment. What David had done in the dark, the Lord brought judgment to the light, right? And I wanted to just share that with you, that the Lord shows even within the narrative of the text how he's bringing about judgment. And Absalom himself is God's judgment. His neighbor, his closest neighbor, his son whom he loved was his closest neighbor, and he brought him great distress. And so that's something I did not get into, couldn't develop in the amount of time that I had, but I wanted to share it with you. Again, Psalm 51 is an amazing psalm that from the very beginning, have mercy on me. Mercy me, O God, according to your steadfast love, according to your abundant mercy, blot out my transgressions. We're going to continue to focus on what it means to have our transgressions blotted out and to have our sin covered by God. And we're going to be looking at Psalm 32 on Sunday, and I'm really excited to be doing that with you. So hopefully this was helpful, and if it wasn't, let me know. If it was, let me know, but I'm trying to do some things to kind of share every now and then. I don't think I'll be doing this every week, but I wanted to be able to share with you just some thoughts that I had, and digging a little deeper into the text and showing you where I'm getting stuff. Because when I preach my sermons, I'm not gonna give all the explanations, because that would take a long time. And but there's a lot of study that goes on behind it, and I want to share that with you, because sometimes there's gold like that I can't share, but it is nonetheless really helpful in seeing the whole narrative of Scripture fit together. So thankful for y'all. Have an awesome week.